In his first speech to the United Nations as president, President Trump vowed to, quote, totally destroy North Korea if it threatens the U.S. His threat is being taken seriously around the world because if there's one thing President Trump has shown he knows how to do, it's destroy a country. The Trump Report starts now.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Sing it, Little Richard. Welcome to the Trump Report. I'm Christian Bladt at ChristianDMZ, Twitter, Instagram, probably some other places. Joined by the very studious Drexel Hurd, who put on these fake glasses right before we went on the air. There's no glass. No glass there. At Drexel Hurd, also at fake glasses. And no, they're real glasses, but he did put them on right before we went on. It was very funny. And next to him, for those watching on YouTube, Chelsea Galicia at Chelsea Galicia. Scott Moore at SMan80. The show's Twitter is at Trump Report ABTV. Quick shout out to our friend Brooks Elise at Brooks Elise TV. Send her some love. I guess she was in a little car accident. From what I hear, she's doing fine. But we miss her and we hope she's doing well. And we look forward to having her on the show soon. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff we could start with today. But let's go with the title of our episode. So, Anthony in the booth, if you could cue up that footage that we need to share with our YouTube audience and Chelsea Galicia, who has not seen this yet. The handshake felt around the world. So we'll take a look at that, and we're enjoying, of course, the Little Richard music. So for those watching, you'll see it. And for those listening on iTunes, well, you get to hear it.
Let us know the sound of a handshake.
Yeah, you should Google this video if you are listening on iTunes.
Or just watch the show.
Of the United States, Donald Trump.
What?
Firm handshake to his wife, and
a pat on the back.
Shove off the stage. Let's take a look at that again, everyone. Thanks to our friends at Reuters. Reuters. I was thinking of Roto-Rooter for some reason when I see.
Look at how many women are standing behind.
Yeah, and they're just like, what just happened? He just shoved him. Anyway, so we see that, and this is the first time you saw that, Chelsea. Yeah. Any thoughts?
That's really cringeworthy. I mean, it makes it seem like the first question was, is their whole marriage like a business arrangement?
Yes. You mean like the Clintons? Probably.
You better watch
that's
your
what
mouth.
Hey, Michelle and Barack, that's for love. Everybody else, though, it's all convenience.
I mean, if this was Michelle and Barack, they would have
Black love.
They would have, bumped fist or something cute like that.
Well, yeah, it's true. If
they're not cool enough for that.
If they did a fist bump, that would have been all right.
Hand.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, the handshake is bad, but all right, now go on, sit down. That's what is followed by. I think that's a lot worse. You hadn't heard about that, so I'm so glad that I got to be the one to show that to you. I know you're not surprised because nothing about President Trump surprises you, but as the only woman here on the panel today,
if my boyfriend or husband shook my hand, I would slap him. I don't know. I don't.
I mean,
you take that hand and slap him with
what?
it.
How about? I mean, a peck on the cheek. All right, maybe
a
hug.
little embrace, just a little. But it doesn't have to be a.
No.
I wonder what the inaugural dance was like. I didn't even watch.
Oh, I watched it. It was awkward.
It was like junior high dance.
Yeah, it was awkward.
It was like leave room for the Holy Spirit. Yeah. So
he might need to be there.
Scott, concerns about
their
Melania?
marriage?
No, about Melania. Does she need our help? # free Melania.
Yes, she needs
Has
for that.
anybody gotten a divorce while in office?
No.
I mean, the Underwoods came close, but in terms of real president and first lady, I don't think so.
No, you've had presidents that have married, because their previous wives have passed away or whatever, but nobody has actually gotten divorced in office.
Could be fun.
Yeah, and I mean, if JFK wasn't Catholic, he would have been divorced.
That's what I want to see. I want to see, in my lifetime, a White House wedding.
A White House wedding? That would be great.
I want to see a White House wedding.
Maybe
could have been Sasha. It could have been Melania. Not Melania.
Melania. What happened to you?
Melania.
Well, it could still happen.
She's a little bit older.
When she's president
Michelle
and
becomes president.
she's not married yet. That's when it can happen.
I actually should, say I was joking about wanting to watch a divorce. I respect the institution
Yeah.
of marriage. I don't want anybody's divorce.
I do if it's not a healthy marriage.
Okay, fine.
If
Yes.
it's not, if it's there for business, then it should be.
By the way, Anthony, if you
better.
could bring up the chat in the YouTube, because we love to see our friends. For those of you watching live, join us in the chat on YouTube. And for those of you watching live, you'll probably see that we're like 4 minutes into the show and I'm already sweating, so that's fun. It's a
we
little warm
are.
in here.
It's
a
very
little warm
toasty
in here.
in
Let's
here.
just put it
Yeah.
that way.
The studio is going through upgrades, man.
I would have definitely worn a tank top if I'd known.
and I'm in a jacket.
Yeah, no, I know, and
I
as
mean,
always,
we could have seen your guns.
Yep, but nobody managed to take the time to buy a ticket to the gun show, and there's no free views. So,
But at least we didn't see any rockets.
what do you? It's definitely not that kind of show, even though it's the internet. Drexel, when you see something
That's the
like
after-hour
this,
show.
when you see this interaction between the president and the first lady, what is your first thought?
My first thought is, that's awkward.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like if that was just your friend, like a non-public figure, and they did
Right.
it, you'd be like, "Oh man, that's so rough."
But it's also like, at least pretend. Like, how many
Yeah.
politicians have gone? I mean, Hillary Clinton sitting next to Bill Clinton, like going through that whole Monica Lewinsky thing, she at least pretended for that little bit of time. Not that the marriage didn't get better and they had to work through things, but like at least pretend. That's what you're there to. That's he's a showman.
Yeah,
The least he could do is pretend like he was interested in Melania, who's very pretty. Like,
Yes.
she's a very
is.
beautiful first lady. But he could have at least pretended like he liked her.
Yeah.
But he's too stuck on.
Himself.
well,
I was going to say Vladimir Putin.
Well, that
Yes,
too, but himself.
as Shareable
about him.
Texas says in the chat, hello Shareable Texas, thank you and follow at Shareable Texas on Twitter to see the new version of his song about us that he did.
Wait, what?
Well, it's a video
It's a
version.
video
Two.
now.
Oh.
Yeah.
I love it. It's 2.0.
The
And
version
Cheryl
2.
Texas says, I can't rule out Putin and Trump getting married. Anything is possible at this
my
point.
God.
Although, Lady Goth points out, Russia doesn't like and then the quotes are around homosexuals. Arscat Brown in blue, which I didn't know you could comment that way, he says, oh, fake
Marriage.
I see Anthony
marriage.
did that. Fake marriage. So, yes, we have fake news, and now we have fake marriage.
Donna Trump. I like
Donna
that.
Trump.
Donna
Well,
Trump.
That's
yeah,
what
there you go.
Cheryl Texas says.
Anyway, so we wanted to start with that, and it gave me an excuse for a little Little Richard song.
You
So,
heard?
you heard? Oh, we heard. So anyway, we'll move on to what probably could have been the lead story, which is President Trump spoke to the UN today. And we all know he has an uncanny ability with nicknames, like Crooked Hillary and Muslim Obama. He's great with the nicknames. So now, Kim Jong-un has been christened Rocket Man for the obvious reason that he thinks it's going to be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh no, I'm a rocket man. Rocket man, burning out his fuse up here, alone. That's right, that's the William Shatner version of Rocket Man, which if I had had that yesterday, that would have been the title of this episode, and it would have been the William Shatner version, but that's all right. I like to do dramatic reading. So, yes, he's the Rocket Man, which, I don't know, I think...
I wonder if everybody got that was the Elton John song.
They didn't need to.
That wasn't the point, right?
Yeah, that was for me. Like 80% of what happens on the show
Right.
is for me. Yeah, like the sweating right now. That's just for me. But I think, look, Crooked Hillary stuck. That's a decent nickname. I think Rocket Man, on a scale of 1 to 10, this is like a 1. That's not a great one.
He didn't have to think of that.
Yeah, well, I mean...
He'll take pride in that.
Oh, I'm sure he will. And it's one of the... He's going to own it. It's like, it doesn't matter if it sticks or not. He's going to just be like, well, I don't know about Rocket Man. He's going to insist that he be referred to as Rocket Man. And so I wonder, Scott, what do you think about antagonizing a maniac? And to be clear, I'm talking about Trump name-calling Kim Jong-un.
Oh, I think you were talking about Trump.
Not Kim Jong-un shooting missiles. And the missiles that Kim Jong-un is shooting might as well have, hey, look at me, printed right on them. Scott, your
I would
thoughts
say the
about...
missiles are blanks, basically, at this point, but that he's shooting. But, I think I think, first of all, Trump's speech was ridiculous, and it goes with his theme of being dark, and everything is being terrible, and
yet he hates people that are dark, so it's just a weird mix right there.
It's very bizarre. We've talked about this at length. There's no reason why he should be antagonizing North Korea, because it's not a good situation for anybody involved. Period.
Yeah, I mean, I
that
think
one.
that I continue to stand by my assessment that I'm not particularly scared about North Korea,
No.
but I think it's it's like just because a hive of, I don't know what is snakes, they're like in a nest, and let's say there's a nest of snakes that aren't poisonous, but they're sleeping. So it's like, why are you gonna wake them up? Just leave them over there. They're gonna be fine. They can't even run the lights, and then you're basically you're name calling this guy in front of all of his friends at the playground, like, so everybody gets to see it, and that it's bad because Russia called Trump's comments about North Korea a dangerous step towards instability. So Putin is saying you are unstable. I don't know. My thinking is that that's not where you want to be. We'll talk about some of the other things.
Apparently, their honeymoon phase is over in that relationship.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at the way he treats Melania. So obviously, I think that Trump doesn't want to get the handshake. He wants to give the handshake, is basically what it comes down to. We'll talk about some of the other things from the speech to the UN, but Drexel, the topic of North Korea, the nickname Rocket Man, and the fury that he's promised, I think actually that he's going to totally destroy North Korea.
I think that there's something to be said for toxic masculinity. In the idea, so Donald Trump reminds me of those people.
That's the cologne I'm wearing right now. Toxic masculinity. It might smell like flop sweat, but it's toxic masculinity.
By Trump.
Official sponsor of the Trump Report.
That Donald Trump's one of those guys, or at least he seems to be one of those guys that just wants affirmation from his buddies.
He wants to swing his something around.
But he wants a back slap. Like if you saw the other day, they had this little kid who all he wanted to do for his wish or whatever was to mow the White House lawn. And if you saw how Donald Trump interacted with that kid, it was like, Donald Trump does the shake of the hand, he like slaps him on the back. Like Donald Trump wants this back slap, and he wants. Well, I don't know what happened to him in his lifetime, but he wants the adoration of his buddies around him to say, that was a great speech. That was what you should be doing.
Ever.
That was masculine. Yeah. Oh, you're a guy. You're a man. Blah, 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 blah. Somebody feminized him at some point in his life to where he feels like, at least this is just my opinion, to where he feels like everything that he says has to be up the next,
like hyper masculine to compensate for something.
Right, where we did not see that in Barack Obama, we did not see that in Bill Clinton, we did not see that in George Bush either, and he had a lot more swagger than this guy, obviously than this guy, and caused quite a few problems to where we are now. So I think that's where we got to start, which is the mindset of this guy who feels like he has to one up the next guy. The only person that he has not felt like he had to one up was Vladimir Putin, because he looks up to that person. So he really wants wants the back slap of Vladimir Putin, and then based on what you just said, got slapped down. And so it'd be interesting to see how he does, because you can see the rhetoric. Nikki Haley the other day, some tweet that they talked about Donald Trump talking about something had come up. I can't remember what it was. So whatever.
There's a lot that come up.
Right,
yeah.
But Nikki Haley, in an interview on Face the Nation on Sunday, said that the reason Donald Trump tweeted out that was because he was an emotional guy. Because he feels like his emotions, he's so wrapped up in this. Can you imagine if the United States ambassador to Hillary Clinton would have said the reason why she made this decision, or Barack Obama, the reason why she made so emotional. This is not some RuPaul's Drag Race song. This is not some Whitney Houston song. Nobody should be so emotional in the White House as Donald Trump, and now he's tweeting about it, and that's what you saw. So I think that we have to really look at Donald Trump from that hyper masculine. That he's got some other issues.
Well, he's got a lot of mental issues going on. And I would just add, too, real quick, that it's also easy to threaten people using the military when he himself or anyone that he loves is not the ones that are going to have to go into sacrifice. It's easy to say, oh, we'll send the military in and go and destroy North Korea, but it's not a sacrifice to him and most Americans.
Remember
and
there
it's
are
just easy for them to...
civilians?
Right, it's just very easy to just throw people in there and not think about how it's going to affect them personally. And that's the thing that makes me upset, too, where it's very, putting... American military lives at risk, and then, like you said, civilians in Seoul, South Korea. There is no way, plus all the North Korean citizens, but there's no way that Seoul, South Korea is not going to be affected by that. And it's dangerous to even do that. When it doesn't affect you personally, you don't care.
Chelsea, Senator Dianne Feinstein described Trump's speech as, quote, bombastic and she complained that the UN had been founded to promote peace, yet Trump had used it, quote, as a stage to threaten war. Do you feel like that's basically what he went up there to do?
Instigator in chief.
I think that I think that's catchy. I think you could put that on the door in front of the Oval Office.
Democrats should use that in 2018. They should use that as a slogan. Get
I'll
on
let
that.
'em know.
Let
Yes.
them know.
Can you get?
start
Yeah, I
branding
mean,
that.
you got some friends on the Hill. You could let them know. You know, just get the word out there. Oh, by the way, you were talking about Whitney Houston before, and I also felt like when he was awkwardly interacting with the 10-year-old who wanted to mow the lawn, which we could talk about for the whole hour.
That's a whole show in itself.
Did you get the sense that he felt the children are our future? Because I didn't.
Well, according to Betsy DeVos, if you don't teach them, you can't lead the way.
That's true. They will not lead the
Lead the
way.
way.
So during his remarks during the at the UN, he called Iran a corrupt dictatorship. All right, well, that doesn't sound that crazy. He complained about the agreement, though, that President Obama signed was an embarrassment to the United States. Chelsea, do you think that an agreement that President Obama signed with Iran is the first thing that comes to mind when someone says embarrassment to the United States? Is that the first thing you think of?
No, not so much.
Okay.
I can think of
Anything come to mind if I throw that word out
You
there?
know that when you have too many options that you just
Sure.
like can't pick one.
Oh yeah, like
I'm
prom
having
night.
a moment
that was
like
me.
that.
Yeah, I just didn't know which one. I think that it was an embarrassment. And Obama's like, why do you keep reminding people about me? That's not going to help you. Do you think, Drexel, that antagonizing North Korea, antagonizing Iran, I don't think this is a mistake. I don't think that this is just he went in there to wing it. I mean, it was all on the teleprompter.
Right.
So this is a very calculated move. The kind of move that you might have been like, oh yeah, Bannon really wants him to, swing his you-know-what around, as Chelsea said. But what do you think is the intent of, walking into that chamber? He opens his mouth. What does he hope happens at the end of the
Well, I
speech?
think it goes back to what I said before, which is this hyper masculinity.
He wants to be the alpha among alphas.
He wants to show people that he controls the biggest and baddest military in the world, which is not far from the truth. But he does not need to remind people. The United those countries understand that piece of it, that there is no military out there that's stronger than the
Especially
United States of
since
America.
today the Senate passed
Right, but
a
besides that, yes. But
$700
here's the thing.
billion.
Right, but I think that people forget that
spending plan for the military.
$700 billion does not go directly to military personnel. That's in defense contracts. That's another thing.
600 million of it, 50 would go to wars.
Right. So and we have bases around the world that need to be maintained and upkept and stuff like that. And I think that that's something that Republicans are constantly doing. But back to
It should
Iran.
still offend us.
But back to the Iran deal. This is something that Donald Trump has renewed since he's been in office. This is something that he will probably renew again on October 15th. That's coming up. So him coming right off the gate and talking about this deal, it's because that's when Donald Trump gets in campaign mode, that's what he reverts back to, the stuff that he's already said before, because he doesn't want to remind people that he's gone back on certain things that he's talked about in the campaign, because they quietly on a Friday night renewed the Iran deal the last time. They will do it again this time. They've quietly renewed stuff on Fridays so that nobody knows. They went into Labor Day weekend talking about some campaign promise that they kind of went back on. So this should not surprise people that in public he would make these statements to corral his base, but behind the scenes he knows that's not going to be the case, and he knows the Iran deal is working. The administration knows the Iran deal is working. I mean, you saw John Huntsman come out today against things. John Huntsman, who was just named United States ambassador to Russia, coming out and saying this speech was not the speech. This is not the way that we do business. This is not the way that I'll be doing business with Russia. And that's in stark contrast to what Donald Trump is. Nikki Haley's the same way. Rick Tillerson, John Kelly, and those guys are all saying the same.
But isn't Donald Trump Jr. basically our ambassador to Russia? I mean, haven't we seen that? And maybe
he doesn't have Secret Service protection
That's
anymore,
true.
so he
No,
might
I
be
know.
flying
He
off
doesn't?
to. He doesn't.
No, it's
he
one of
gave
the
up
things we'll
that.
talk about. Yeah.
One quick question though.
Yeah.
Speaking of going back, I saw some article about Trump changing his mind on the Paris Agreement, and then I didn't hear anything else about it. Was that
Yeah, that's
like
probably
a
the
dream?
way that's going to go.
Yeah,
No,
I
I
think
saw that
yeah.
article, and it's a lot of putting a little trial balloon out there. Let's see what happens.
Yep. See what people say, and Just kidding.
The speech to the UN was clearly an America First speech, and President Trump used the word sovereign or a variation of it 19 times in the speech, which, according to my friends at thehill.com, means almost once every 2 minutes he talked about the sovereignty or used the word sovereign. So, I don't know. I mean, I guess he wants to put America first, but at the same time, let's just whack-a-mole every other country around the world that we don't like. Not every country. I mean, Canada knows, to step in line, Canada will shake their hand and tell them to sit down right after they introduce us. That's how we treat Canada. But I think that it's sort of an interesting thing, Scott, and maybe interesting is not a good word because maybe, I don't know, you find it terrifying or something. But what do you think about someone, and by someone I mean our president, talking about America in those terms while also talking about all of our involvement around the world, should he be so inclined?
Right, and then in his speech, he also mentioned that every other country should put themselves first. And I get on paper that sounds really nice. Like, yes, let's take care of ourselves first, and then we can help other people. But it doesn't really work in a community on a planet when you all are interconnected and everybody has to work and work together,
take care of ourselves,
right, for common goals and common interests that affect everybody, and that helps lead to world peace. Because the more that you're isolating and saying it's me first, me first, me first, me first, you're just setting it up to have instability in the world because now everyone's looking at their own needs first and everyone else can just go to hell, basically, and that is a dangerous place to be. And we've seen how isolationism has never really worked with the U.S., unfortunately. We tried to do that in the 20s and 30s, and
that turned out all right, didn't it?
It just doesn't work out very well.
So, what went wrong? By the way, a direct quote from this portion of the speech is, quote, "The nation state remains the best vehicle for elevating the human condition." All right.
Nation state.
The nation. Look, he wants to elevate the human condition. That sounds great. That sounds like the kind of stuff that Stephen Hawking wants to do. He wants to elevate the human condition. What could be wrong with that, Drexel?
Everything.
Oh, okay. Tell me more.
But one thing I do want to point out, because I was having this conversation, I know we're not going to talk about it. I don't know if we're talking about healthcare today, but I know
we might.
One of the things that I want to remind people, and this goes not only for healthcare debates but international debates as well, which is we have a moral obligation, and I think that's where Hillary Clinton talks about it during the campaign, which is why she felt that she did certain things from a moral standpoint is to help people around the world. If Americans can't get past Americans that voted for Trump have some sort of morale, in my opinion, some sort of morality to think that this America First is an immoral standpoint in my head when it comes to our standing in the world as a global superpower. Trump voters who believe they want, as we go into Graham Cassidy next week, voters who are interested in repealing and replacing Obamacare have an immoral view of how they treat their fellow citizens. And if we cannot get back to the idea that if we cannot change the conversation to a moral argument, when you have Christian conservatives going around trying to make social issues a moral argument, and then they don't want to help people on the back end, that's a problem. And so when we look at international issues, people have to start looking at international issues from a moral obligation to help certain countries, which is why, regardless of what happened in Iraq, in George Bush's mind, we had a moral obligation to go into that. Now, it might have been totally screwed up, but from his mind, democracy is a moral issue. Giving people an opportunity is a moral issue, and some Republicans believe that piece of it. And helping other nations around the world,
weapons of mass destruction.
And it's a moral obligation for the United States to provide
if we had any
nets
morals,
for people in
right
Africa.
now we would be stopping the genocide in Myanmar.
Right.
There's
And
a
there-
Sorry,
massive
where's
ethnic cleansing.
Right, that's true.
It's not even funny. I don't
Right.
even know.
No, I just meant, but it's true. It's funny because it's true. Like it's just, it's like you would think that Americans would be interested in, from a superpower standpoint, from a moral have a moral obligation to help people around the world. Not only help people around the world, but to help people in the United States, because that is what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with that more.
Something I wasn't planning on talking about, but a conversation we had before the show made me come up with a good question, and I almost asked it. I'm like, wait, save it for the air. And it's sort of relevant for right now. It's a hypothetical. It's like a fun little, parlor trick, party game kind of thing that you can ask people. And we'll go around, and we'll start with Scott. If you would be able to take away a Trump presidency. Your case being less than one term. Let's just say one full term. 4 years of Trump. You could do away with 4 years of Trump, but in place, you would get 8 more years of George W. Bush. Would you make that trade? Scott Moore! I should have loaded up the Jeopardy theme, but I only just thought of this like 2 minutes before we went on. 8 years of George W. Bush or 4 years of Donald Trump?
Is it so? It's 8 years.
Yeah,
after, so we're not replaying the 8 years of
it's
before.
a new 8 years. It's there's some kind of amendment that only he gets to serve again.
Very important. Does it come with Dick and Cheney?
That's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say.
Let's say he gets the band back together. Okay, so it's a reunion tour. He gets everybody back together. 8 years, the same gang is back in the White House, but Trump never sets foot in it. That hypothetical. It's not an easy answer.
No, I think if it was less than one term for
Trump.
if it was one term, then he would be voted out and it would be back to a Democrat.
All right, so you say no. You don't want to.
No, I'd say less than one term. If he was going to be booted out and he had
You're
to be
saying
replaced,
George W. Bush wouldn't get
I replace George W. Bush and let him have 8 years.
So then Cheney could be president.
No, Cheney will never be president.
I mean, in this hypothetical, he's
No.
coming on board. It's 8 more years of George W. So you'd rather have the 4 years
God,
or less
that's
than 4
really
years.
hard. I'd have
was
to take
really
less
proud
than
of
4
myself.
years of Trump. Not 4 years. Can't
Cherville,
even deal with
Texas.
4 years.
Cherville, Texas says 8 years of GW. Chelsea, your thought?
I think also the 8 years of GW.
I would have to,
I think he is hopefully. I don't know if he is embarrassed about his decision to invade Iraq,
Well, you feel like he's grown maybe as a person
and
since
so maybe he's like,
His painting show.
I can't
years ago.
imagine that under George W. Bush, the spending in the military would be higher than $700 billion.
Well, I mean, if Cheney's around, it probably
probably
would
be a
be.
trillion.
But I don't think. But it. I mean, I guess 8 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, for inflation,
It wasn't.
it's like
purposes,
600 billion.
Ooh,
So that's
that's
the
a
inflation.
hard one.
Billion.
Yeah.
I can't even fathom $700 billion. You know what else I couldn't fathom? Really quick, the Mexico earthquake today
Yes.
was 43 miles deep. Can you take on the fact that you can drill down? You can't drill down.
I mean, I wouldn't drill down
Go to the other side of the planet.
These are just some numbers that have been blowing my
that's
mind.
where Kelly
Maybe they
and
could do a
Kanye is hiding.
hyperloop. You know, Elon Musk could just build a hyperloop that goes in between the
Straight
planet
down.
and just goes straight down and back up the other side.
I want to give Drexel a chance. Would you trade 4 years of Don John Trump for G.W. Bush?
Well,
8 years. of
I'm
G.W.
gonna make a quick confession that I don't know if
George
that
Washington.
I've said on this show. George Washington. We're going way back to GW.
Yeah, wrong G.W. Well, you know,
that
I mean,
GW.
yeah, if he was in the mix, I think most of us would be like, yeah, sure, let's let George Washington go ahead.
I'm just gonna make it. I don't know if I've said on this show before. I know that I've talked about it before, having been executive director of college Republicans at the time that that Bush's reelection came on.
2000.
So 2004.
2004. Okay.
So I voted for another 8 years of George W. I voted for George W. Bush.
So you voted in 2000 and in 2004?
No, I voted in 2004.
Because we were too young.
I was going to say,
too young.
yeah, old enough.
Oh,
Yeah.
stop.
So
Thank you,
So
Scott. At least I don't have to feel terrible about it.
but
I voted for
obviously,
Gore in Florida. Thank you very much.
and
I'm proud of
we
that.
can have a whole conversation on why I thought John Kerry was a weak candidate at the time, and there was a lot going on. And I came from a very military family, so George Bush was a little bit different time back then. Republicans were a little bit different back then.
Yes, they were.
It was a little bit different time.
A
So
little bit.
not as crazy as I
Social
was
stuff
definitely
in
not.
2004
right,
was
right.
really upsetting.
But I would definitely take 8 years of George W. Bush because I think his paintings reflect growth at this point. Then 4 more.
I mean, look at how much.
Then a year of Donald Trump, really.
I know we're not supposed to talk about presidential kids, but they're adults now. Look at his daughters now; like they're so responsible. They're on the Today Show. I think one of them was doing stand-up. So the growth for his kids. That tells you that he must be fine. And just think about how many more years he's had Jesus in him.
The
now.
only thing about him too is that I actually believe that he's a decent person and that
I think
he's not like Donald Trump, where I have not found a single thing about him that I find that good little
redeemable quality.
redeeming quality deep inside. At least
I think George
I
W.
do feel
Bush's
that way.
views on how to run government are
don't
probably
agree with
very
them.
different.
Right.
But it is a way
As a
that
person.
It is a way with which following them, the government can still run. It's just not what you would want to do. It's not where you'd want to focus.
I would feel like I'm losing sleep, you know,
Right.
because I'm worried what Trump's gonna tweet and do.
By the way, the Demonaut says 8 years is a lot more damage than 4, and also Drexel's not prehistoric. but he, Tyrannosaurus Drex. Thank you, Shareable Texas. Shareable Texas is on fire tonight.
I think I'm going to
just
call
wanna be-
you T-Drex.
That's what
T-Drex.
they, some people used to call me that in high school.
Did they really?
I mean, does it have anything to do with the fact that you have this hand?
Right now, look at the mic.
Anyway, those of you that are listening to the show after the fact, please tweet us at Trump Report ABTV. Let us know, would you take 8 years of George W. Bush if it meant not having 4 years of...
I said less than 4 for Trump.
I know, but
Less than 4.
I'm saying 4 because
I think we'll give him a term.
But I want to amend. I think there should be an amendment because we talked about Dick Cheney. Does that come with a Democratic Congress or a Republican Congress? I could do.
There we go, 2006.
I could do 4 years of Donald Trump, maybe with a Democratic Congress, because then nothing would get done.
That's
No damage, because
true.
the
You have to add that caveat.
the Democrats said 8 years is a lot more damage than 4. But
He's
right
the demo
now,
not. Don't call him Democrat.
Demon
They
not,
disagree.
sorry.
That's like
The
Hatfield's
demon
McCoy
not.
stuff. Yeah.
No, I did not vote for.
No, he was very.
I could not vote in
He wasn't old
2000.
enough.
I wasn't old
so
enough.
he voted
to
for
vote.
Bush and not John Kerry.
John Kerry.
And I don't think
John Kerry.
anybody really want to fall on the John Kerry sword about how great he was.
Right, and let's talk about how we dodged a
voted for
bullet.
John Kerry.
How we dodged
Well, I did
kind of
too,
a bullet
but-
with John Edwards. Because could you imagine an impeachment
Right, I know.
of the vice president? Whatever.
What about a George
you went to
W.
NC
Bush
State too, like I did. So
With the
whatever.
Democratic
It's okay
Congress,
with
though,
that.
too.
Quick
though.
yes or no?
That
No
would be
debate.
yes.
Would you take President John Edwards over President Donald Trump? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, there you go. I guess.
I mean, there's almost anyone I would take.
Right. At
Trump,
this point,
seriously.
absolutely.
yeah. President Voldemort, President Darth Vader.
But
yes.
back then, we would not have been in the same situation that we were right now. We would not be like thinking that the president was an idiot. Like we would be like, okay,
I used to think George W. Bush was an idiot.
I
I meant like the climate was different. Like we could handle like a John Kerry scandal,
Sure.
and be like, okay,
Yeah, John.
and get through
John
it. Now we
Kerry's-
would never be able to do
John
that.
Kerry's biggest smile. I ruined my own stupid joke. John Kerry's biggest scandal is that he accidentally smiled once. Michelle Falacci said she would in a heartbeat. And Lady Goth says that's not math. Anyway, so again, you can tweet us at Trump Report ABTV. Let us know. I used up a lot of our time on that, but I thought that was more
It's
fun
fun.
than what
No,
I was
I
going
liked
to talk
it.
about.
Yes, I liked it.
Take a
So tune in next week when we see if you would trade Grover Cleveland for President H.W. Bush.
Well, is it
no
Grover,
answers
wait,
tonight.
Grover Cleveland first term or the 22nd president or Grover Cleveland part 2
Those
when he was the
rules
24th?
will be put down next week. We don't have the
1880s
answer.
Grover Cleveland or 1890s President Cleveland?
Anyway,
Big difference.
Yes,
And
uh,
you get the White House wedding
And we
too.
have 10 minutes left?
Yes, we have 10 minutes
Goodness
left. Good. Well, we spent 10 minutes on that. So,
I can't wait for your Manafort jokes.
I don't have any.
Because that's a joke in itself.
Oh, hey.
A fun story is a group of angry young immigrants chanting, "All of us or none of us," shut down a news conference by House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi on her home turf in San Francisco. So, all right, hey, you guys are definitely barking up the wrong person with the personality of a tree, okay? That's not the place to, like, she's someone who might be able to help you, and let's shout her down and not let her talk. I get it, this is an important issue, and you're trying to make a point, but is that maybe misguided, Drexel? Is Nancy Pelosi that much of an enemy of young immigrants? And maybe I'm wrong, because I am neither young nor an immigrant.
Well, here's the thing. People know that I'm a fan of Nancy Pelosi. I got no problems with Nancy Pelosi. I mean, she brokered her deal sitting in the White House, and Mitch McConnell was looking at her through his turtle shell. So I think
Without even,
that
like, having to-
right, he didn't have to do anything,
and she didn't have to lift a finger to do
right,
it.
and. But I think that there's one thing that I want to make sure that it's clear to people is that there are a lot of dreamers out there that are really afraid of what's happening next. And I think that they want to make sure that whatever deal is brokered by the Democrats is something that is fair. What I did not appreciate was the fact that they thought that Democrats weren't going to come back to this issue, as if you know. And Dick Durbin brought this up in an interview the other day where he said, I want, had we brought this up during brokering certain deals about Harvey and all this other funding, we would have never made the deal. It would have just never been there. So I think people have to understand, and Chelsea and I talked about this in terms of process on the political beat, which is people have to understand the process and the way that the Senate works and the way that the rules work. And Pelosi's in the House. She really has no leverage. Like, she can't really do anything. She didn't have the numbers for that. And the idea that Democrats have to broker all the deals at the same time is unrealistic, in my opinion. Everything has to be piecemealed through certain processes. And like you said, I don't think it's necessarily barking up the wrong tree. It's not taking advantage of the time that you have where the leader of the Democratic Party, or in this case, the leader of the House Democrats, is standing right in front of you and having that conversation with her and just making sure she understood. Because if you saw her, like, she's very calm. And then you could see that the hint of frustration and anger in her voice at a certain point. She's like, okay, got it, understood. Obviously, you don't want to listen to me. And I think that that's what people have to realize is that, yeah, people are going to listen to you. Nancy Pelosi is going to listen to you. But you got to give her an opportunity to do that. And you can't stand in front of her and then not listen to her when she's asking you to get, like, for her attention and, like, talk to her at that moment. And that would have been a great conversation to have on television, which was listen to Nancy Pelosi talk to these dreamers and have that conversation. Could you imagine? The cameras would not have left that conversation and what that would have done for Democrats in terms of and Dreamers, in terms of seeing that conversation. I saw more people share the fact that Black Lives Matter was at a Trump rally last week, or the mother of all rallies, which had like 100 people or whatever. And that people and that conversation that came from that, then the Dreamers having the conversation with Nancy Pelosi, it could have been beautiful.
Right, but of course, what you're going to see a lot more on TV is people yelling over Nancy Pelosi. Right. That's what's going to get shown. Right. What were you going to say, Scott?
No, I was just going to say, I think it's a very fine line because they have to remember that she's there to help them. But on their perspective, I think that a lot of them are so incredibly afraid and so nervous about what's going to happen and don't want to be used just as a number, as a bargaining chip, as, you know, and that they're actual people, and I feel that there's going to be that emotion and that anger and that fear because it's so up in the air right now and they don't know what's going to happen with them, and it's just they have to take a step back and realize she's their friend and not their enemy. It's sort of like which we as liberals have had a difficult time doing is, you know, sort of going and voting for, like, for instance, in the race, voting for Hillary Clinton, but they're like, well, she's not pure enough, she's not liberal enough, and so we're not going to vote. It's sort of that same thing, like, you know, Nancy Pelosi's not their enemy, but if she's not going to go out and say, okay, everyone's going to get amnesty tomorrow, and I'm supporting this immediately, if she's not saying the right things, they're automatically now going to discount her and get upset, and of course there's a lot of emotion involved. So it's finding that balance there and knowing that she is going to be there to help them, but I also can understand their passion and their scaredness and their fear and their don't want to be a number or bargaining chip too.
Chelsea, let me ask Chelsea, do you feel like that helps the cause of the Dreamers that they shouted her down there? Or, as Drexel said, could it have been a very productive meeting where they could have been like, here's what our concerns are, can you please take those back to the House? Maybe nothing happens, but now definitely nothing happens.
I think it hurts them because it reduces the number of possible allies. People don't find it respectful when you shout down a leader, and they might think, you know, this is the way these people act, you know, who needs them, and may not be as sympathetic to their cause. So I think in terms of actual voters who can make a difference, the cause may have lost some.
And that goes just to Chelsea's point on that. Like, I had somebody post on my wall that video who, clearly a Republican, who said, what do you think about Nancy Pelosi being shouted down? And I said, well, Democrats believe in free speech, so obviously this is where we are. And this is what people do when the First Amendment gives them the right to protest or whatever. And so I think that
it's actually not been litigated whether non-citizens have the same rights.
That's true.
Right. And so I think that that there's a couple things that people have to remember is that, at least in my opinion, that first of all, our generation right now is really craves action, like has been waiting so long for action that any action that is too slow. Like, if you're not making a decision right now, it's going to be too slow. The other side of that, we live in this 24-hour news cycle, and if it or the social media world where everything is instant.
Don't knock us.
No, I'm just saying that we require things in an instant. We require information instantly. We get information instantly.
We interact
and
instantly.
we interact instantly. And if we're not getting that information, and we're not seeing the results on that instantly, then it's causing a problem. And I think that's going to be a problem that rapid response teams in terms of campaigns are going to have to deal with over the next few years. Democrats are going to have to readjust the way that they respond to things quickly, and Republicans aren't going to be very good at that. But, but that's something that I think will benefit the party going forward.
We only have a couple minutes. I wanted to get a couple quick hits in here. We mentioned it in passing before. Donald Trump Jr., his wife Vanessa Trump, and Kellyanne Conway have all dropped Secret Service protection, which can mean only one thing. Don Jr., his wife Vanessa, and Kellyanne Conway are all swingers. You all kind of knew they were into some crazy stuff, some 50 Shades of you-know-what. So that makes sense. You don't want the Secret Service because you don't want them knowing what's going on. So good for you guys. Glad you can get your freak on. The Emmys were on Sunday, the lowest ratings ever.
We're going to talk about the Emmys over Paul Manafort possibly being indicted.
I have a minute. Do you want to talk about Paul Manafort? And conservatives are having a field day because the ratings were so low because they hate Stephen Colbert. They hate him. And they're saying it's because the show went after Trump, not because people don't watch the Emmys because it's a fucking award show for television. And people haven't been watching it for years.
I watched the Emmys.
I've watched it.
I did too.
I've been there a few times. And, people don't watch it. But on the episode, because it was basically an episode of the Emmys, they brought out the real Spicy came out for a punchline for a joke, and a lot of people were like, no, don't embrace him. Like, he's fun, like he's our friend. He's somebody who blatantly lied to us, and that was the point. And I would ask the panel what they all thought about it, but instead, I'll just have to ask the yes or no. Is it okay to bring Sean Spicer on and joke around with him, or do you feel like somebody like Stephen Colbert, who probably really despises Sean Spicer, should have been like, no, let's not do that joke? Scott.
I mean, I thought it would have been great if Melissa McCarthy had done it.
Right, which I
that
think
would have
maybe
been-
people would have expected.
that-
And
yeah.
if Spicy had said no, that's probably what they would have done.
Yeah, he's just trying to get his 15 minutes now that he's out of the White
Yeah.
House.
Do you think, Chelsea, that Sean Spicer should never be on TV again?
Yes, but I found the Emmy bit funny, but I haven't really thought it through about what this could mean,
Yeah, I
embracing what I was too stuck on the 700 billion thing.
It came out today, not on
Is that
internet.
Pat Robertson's thing, the 700
700
billion
Club?
club? Yeah. And Drexel.
how much money he makes now for all
Very
these people.
quickly, your thought there, Drexel, on that. And
Listen,
by quickly, I mean like 10
I would have
seconds.
much preferred Hillary Clinton to walk out on that stage, but listen, because
I don't think they can afford her.
but I think if you can bring out Hillary, I think if you can bring out Sean Spicer and allow him to lie, to have done the thing. To bring out Sean Spicer, I would have much preferred somebody else.
So
exactly.
I wanted to get to some quick audience feedback. Andreas Froby tweeted, the best talk show about U.S. politics is at Trump Report ABTV. Thanks, Andreas Froby.
so nice.
And finally, in last week's audience feedback, Lady J8826 8826 said, Christian, I'm totally annoyed with the way you kept cutting off, containing, and cornering Chelsea. She had great contributions, and you just kept choosing to hear yourself. Chelsea, do you think that happened?
Oh, well, I want to.
Okay, thanks so much, Chelsea. And that is our time on the Trump Report at Trump Report ABTV on Twitter. For Scott Moore at SMan80, Chelsea Galicia at Chelsea Galicia, Drexel Hurd at Drexel Hurd. I'm Christian Bladt at Christian DMZ. We will be back next Tuesday, right after the political beat, at 6 o'clock on AfterBuzz. We'll be here at 7 Pacific, so make sure to check us out there. And as I said, at Trump Report ABTV. Thanks so much. We'll see you guys next week.
2-hour power hour.
That's right.
Or somebody on YouTube said, hour 39 minute
for
power.
TV.
Oh, that's all right. You could keep playing that. That was all right, Anthony. I didn't realize the mic was on.
That got Chuck Schumer in trouble last week. I think they liked us. No,
From
just
executive producers Maria Menounos, Keven Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.